The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was a space of cold elegance, an architectural marvel meant to reflect the unity of 1,000 species. Vast, circular, and bathed in an ethereal light from the pulsating stars outside, it was an arena for decisions that shaped the course of entire civilizations. Today, the fate of Earth, the cradle of humanity, hung in the balance. Commander Ethan Hale stood at the heart of the chamber, his back straight and his hands clasped behind him. His uniform, simple yet dignified, was adorned with the insignia of the United Earth Federation. His face, though lined with years of hardship, remained composed. The war was over for humanity, but the scars of the conflict were still fresh, not just in the blood of his soldiers but in the eyes of the Council. The beings seated in front of him, their alien faces shrouded in a veil of skepticism, had made up their minds long ago. He could feel their gaze, the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. "Commander Hale," the voice of Ikar, the Supreme Judge, broke the silence, his tone sharp as the blade of a knife. "You stand here before us today, pleading for the right to be recognized among the galactic community. Tell us, Commander, why should we risk our peace on a species born of war?" Ethan's jaw clenched, but he met Ikar's gaze without flinching. The Supreme Judge, a being of tall, pale blue skin and black eyes, was a symbol of the Galactic Council's authority. His reputation for being unyielding in his decisions was well known across the galaxy. But Ethan had no time for fear, not today. Today, Earth's future was at stake. "We fought for our freedom," Ethan began, his voice calm but firm. "Not for conquest, but for survival. We emerged from the ashes of war, and now we fight not with weapons, but with our will to contribute, to coexist. Yes, we were forged in the fires of battle, but that doesn't define us anymore. We've learned, evolved. We are not the same species that once ravaged our own planet." Ikar's eyes narrowed, and his mouth twisted into something between a frown and a sneer. "You ask us to believe that? That the race that tore apart its own world is now ready to join a peaceful galactic community?" Ethan's fist clenched, but he kept his composure. He had anticipated this, expected it. "We are a species of contradictions. We have destroyed, yes. But we have also built empires, cities, and cultures that have withstood time and conflict. Our history is riddled with mistakes, but that doesn't mean we cannot change. Every day, we fight to rebuild, to heal the wounds of our past. Is that not what every species does?" The room was silent. The council members, a diverse assembly of beings from across the galaxy, exchanged looks. Ethan could feel their doubt, their distrust. They were not convinced. Ikar raised his hand, and the quiet hum of the room deepened, the atmosphere tense. "We cannot ignore the evidence, Commander Hale," Ikar continued, his voice laced with authority. "Your people have not only fought amongst themselves, they have waged war against the galaxy. You've used weapons of mass destruction, weapons that threaten to destabilize entire star systems. The events on Teriax 9 alone—" "I know," Ethan interrupted, his voice sharper than intended. He took a steadying breath, his eyes flashing with the memory of that distant, tragic war. "I know what happened on Teriax 9. It was a disaster, a mistake that cost thousands of lives. But it was the actions of a few, not humanity as a whole. It's the few who still hold on to old ideologies of conquest. And they will never represent us again. Not as long as I live." Ikar's gaze hardened. "You ask us to believe that, and yet you stand here, a soldier of war. You are a symbol of everything that makes your species dangerous." "I am," Ethan acknowledged. "But that's not all I am. I've seen the horrors of war. I've fought in them, bled for them. But I've also seen the strength of humanity to rebuild, to stand tall in the face of despair. It's that strength, that will to survive, that will make us worthy of your trust." Ikar studied him for a moment, and then he looked toward the other members of the council. Ethan could almost feel the deliberation happening, the quiet whispers, the cautious glances. The room was filled with alien species, each one with its own history, its own set of values. Some were pragmatic, some idealistic, but all had one thing in common: fear of the unknown. A voice broke through the silence. It was Ambassador Stara, a diplomat from the Ariane Nebula, an alien race known for their neutrality. She had been silent up until now, but her words carried weight. "Supreme Judge," she began, her tone measured, "we cannot ignore the fact that Earth has made progress. Commander Hale speaks of the rebuilding efforts, of the changes they've undergone. Perhaps we should give them a chance, rather than condemn them for the mistakes of the past." Icarus' eyes flicked towards Stara. "And what of the risks? What of the potential dangers that humanity poses? What of their volatile nature?" Stara's expression softened, almost empathetic. "They are not the first species to emerge from violence. Many races in this galaxy have risen from the same bloodshed. The real question is not whether they were forged by war, but whether they will continue to be defined by it. Humanity has the potential to evolve. I believe that, as much as I believe the stars themselves burn brightly." Ethan's heart surged at her words. There was hope, after all. But hope wasn't enough. He had to do more. The fate of his people wasn't just a matter of speeches and promises. It was a fight for survival, a fight that couldn't be won in a courtroom. The council members were still murmuring, but Icar raised his hand again, signaling the end of the debate. "This matter is not settled yet," Icar declared, his voice final. "We will deliberate further. Commander Hale, you may leave for now. But know this, should you fail to convince us of humanity's true potential, your world will be condemned to isolation. There will be no second chance." Ethan turned away, his heart heavy, but his resolve unbroken. He had come this far. He would not allow his people to fall into the darkness again. Outside the grand hall, as the heavy doors closed behind him, Ethan whispered to himself, "We are not defined by our past. Not anymore." And with that, he walked into the uncertain future, knowing that the fight for Earth's place in the galaxy was far from over. The tension in the air on Earth's command ship, the Perseverance, was palpable. Its metal corridors hummed with the silent echoes of soldiers marching to and fro, as if the very ship itself felt the weight of the decisions yet to be made. Ethan Hale paced back and forth in his quarters, a place that had once been a sanctuary, a place to rest, to think. Now, it felt like a prison. His mind kept returning to the words of Icar, the Supreme Judge, the cold finality in his voice. "Your world will be condemned to isolation." Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. He had barely escaped the council chamber with Earth's future still hanging by a thread. Yet even as he fought for the survival of humanity's place in the galaxy, an internal war was brewing, one that threatened to tear apart everything they had worked for. The military factions on Earth, disillusioned with the Council's lack of trust, were considering a radical move, open rebellion. His communicator beeped, dragging him out of his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Claire Dorian, his most trusted officer and strategist. "Commander, you need to see this," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Ethan nodded, pushing himself off the wall and heading straight for the war room. He found Claire standing by a holographic display, her brow furrowed as she examined the data. "What is it?" Ethan asked, his voice low. Claire's fingers flicked through the projections, bringing up images of various rogue military units scattered across Earth. Their movements were erratic, uncoordinated, until now. The rogue factions had gathered, organized in secret, ready to take extreme measures. The Federation's hardliners, people like General Breck, had begun planning an attack on the Galactic Council. Their goal: force the Council's hand and demand Earth's recognition by any means necessary. "They're making their move, Ethan," Claire said, her voice filled with a mix of fear and resolve. "And they're doing it without your consent." Ethan stared at the display, his heart pounding. The factions weren't waiting for his diplomacy. They had already decided that war was the only way forward. General Breck, a former war hero, had long been a proponent of military might over negotiation. He believed that humanity's strength was in its ability to conquer, not to beg for acceptance. Ethan couldn't allow this. Not after everything humanity had endured, not after all the blood that had been spilled to rebuild a broken world. He couldn't let it all unravel now. "I'll talk to him," Ethan said, his voice hardening. Get me Breck. The walls of the Federation's headquarters in Geneva were lined with polished wood and stone, a stark contrast to the cold, metallic feel of the Perseverance. General Breck stood at the far end of the conference room, his back to Ethan, staring out of a large window that overlooked the sprawling city. The weight of Earth's fate pressed heavily on both men. You're making a mistake, Ethan said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. Breck turned slowly, his eyes hard, filled with determination. No, Ethan. The mistake is thinking we can change the minds of those council bureaucrats. We've tried for years, and what do we have to show for it? A place at the table? They look at us like we're a problem to be solved, not a people to be respected. And what do you propose? Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the simmering frustration inside him. We do what any self-respecting species would do. We take what's ours, Breck said, his voice cold, calculated. We strike first. Show them that we are not to be ignored. Ethan shook his head, his mind racing. We're not that kind of species anymore, Breck. We fought to break free from the cycle of violence, to rebuild. We are more than what we were. Breck's jaw tightened, and for a moment, it seemed as though he would say something more, but instead, he turned his back to Ethan again, staring out the window. Then we're too weak, Ethan. And weakness will get us killed. Ethan stepped forward, his hands clenching at his sides. You're wrong. Strength isn't in destruction, it's in restraint. In showing that we can grow beyond our past. If we start this war, we won't just be fighting the Council, we'll be fighting ourselves. Breck's shoulders stiffened. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see what's at stake? But what if you're wrong? What if the Council never sees us as equals? What if they never see us as anything but a threat? Ethan took a deep breath, his voice softening. Then we fight, but we fight for something different. We fight for peace, for coexistence. We fight to prove that humanity can change, that we can be trusted with the galaxy's future. Breck turned to face him, his eyes narrowing. And if they don't believe us? Then we show them, with every action we take, Ethan said, his voice firm. We prove them wrong. There was a long silence between them, thick with unspoken words. Ethan knew Breck's heart was in the right place, but his vision was clouded by anger and fear that humanity would never be accepted. Ethan's role, his responsibility, was to guide his people through that fear and into the future they deserved. I'm not going to let you start a war, Breck, Ethan said firmly. And if you try, I'll stop you. Breck's gaze remained cold, but there was a flicker of something else, perhaps respect, perhaps regret. He nodded slowly. I'll do things your way, Hale. For now. As Ethan left the room, Claire was waiting for him. She had been silent throughout the conversation, but her eyes were filled with concern. Is he with us? She asked. For now, Ethan replied, his voice grim. But it won't be easy. There are too many people who think like Breck. The radicals won't back down easily. We need a plan, Claire said, her voice decisive. A real plan. We need to show them that there's another way, that humanity can prove itself without bloodshed. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead. The Council had already made up their minds, but there was still a chance. A small, fragile chance. He couldn't afford to lose it. Not now. We'll need to act fast, Ethan said. If the military factions move forward, there will be no turning back. We have to show the galaxy that humanity is ready to join the peaceful future, not destroy it. As he walked down the cold hallways of the Perseverance, Ethan knew that the war was far from over. It was just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. But for humanity to survive in the galaxy, they had to find another way, a way that didn't involve destruction, but the strength to rise above it. The quiet hum of the Perseverance was interrupted by the sharp beeping of the alert system. Ethan's hand hovered over the console as the ship's AI flashed an urgent message across the screen. The Galactic Council had issued their ultimatum. In 72 hours, Earth would face the vote, either granted entry into the galactic community or permanently excluded. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the blinking lights, his thoughts tangled. 72 hours. Humanity's fate would be decided in 3 days. I know what you're thinking, Claire Dorian said, her voice cutting through the silence. She stood beside him, watching the display. But we have to act fast. The clock's ticking, and Breck's faction is only getting more desperate. Ethan turned to face her, his eyes weary but resolute. I know. I've seen the reports. They're planning something, Claire, something big. I can feel it. Claire nodded, her expression hardening. We can't afford to wait any longer. Breck's not the only one who thinks violence is the answer. There's a growing sentiment on Earth that the Council will never accept us. We need to show them that we're capable of peace. We can't fight the Council on their terms, Ethan said. They'll crush us. We've already lost too much. Claire's gaze softened. Then we need to fight on our own terms. We need to prove to them that we've learned from our past. That we're stronger than war. Ethan nodded, turning his attention back to the holographic map of Earth's military sectors. His mind raced with possibilities, but none seemed promising. Diplomatic solutions had failed. Military intervention was off the table, at least for now. What could they do to change the minds of a galaxy that feared humanity? Then it clicked. He stood up, the weight of his decision settling on his shoulders. Claire, I think I know how to do this. The scene shifted to the high-security briefing room on the Perseverance. Ethan stood before a group of Earth's highest-ranking officials, all eyes fixed on him as he outlined his plan. We've been fighting for our place in the galaxy, Ethan said, his voice steady. But the truth is, we've been fighting the wrong enemy. The Galactic Council sees us as a threat because they fear what we could become. But what if we showed them what we already are? Claire, standing to his left, leaned forward. What Ethan is proposing is a full demonstration. Not of our weapons, but of our humanity. We'll show them that Earth is more than its history of war. A murmur ran through the room, a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Ethan knew this wasn't going to be easy. Some of the military leaders still believed the only way forward was through force. But he was no longer asking for their trust. He was demanding their belief in something bigger than themselves. We will offer a live broadcast to the Council, Ethan continued. Not just of our people, but of our world. We'll invite a representative from every species in the galaxy to witness what humanity has built, to see how far we've come. And we'll do it under their scrutiny. No weapons, no tricks. Just us. A general from the Earth military, General Kavanaugh, scoffed. You want us to send a message of peace, Ethan? What makes you think they'll believe it? The Council's made up its mind. I'm not doing this for the Council, Ethan replied, his voice sharp. I'm doing this for us. We need to see who we really are, not who they think we are. We've spent too long trying to prove something to others. Now it's time to prove it to ourselves. Kavanaugh's lips tightened, but he didn't argue. He had seen too much war, just like Ethan. The general knew that whatever path they took, it would cost them dearly. The broadcast was set. As the day of reckoning approached, Earth's leaders scrambled to prepare their most compelling evidence, stories of survival, cooperation, and hope. Ethan's plan was simple, yet audacious. They would showcase humanity's progress not just as a species, but as a community, one that had risen from the ashes of war and forged something worth saving. Ethan stood on the command deck of the Perseverance, watching as the transmission equipment powered up. He had made his decision, and now there was no turning back. The galaxy would see Earth in a way they never had before. Claire walked up beside him, her face a mask of concentration. Everything's in place, she said. All systems are ready for the broadcast. We're good to go. Ethan nodded but said nothing. He had always been a man of action, not words. Yet, as the countdown to the broadcast ticked closer, he couldn't help but feel a deep unease. This was their last shot at survival. If it failed, Earth would be cast into the void. Commander Hale. A voice crackled through the comm system. It was Ambassador Stara, the Arian diplomat who had quietly supported Earth's case within the Council. The Council is watching. This is your moment. Ethan's eyes narrowed, a fire kindling within him. Then let them watch. The transmission began. The images broadcasted across the galaxy, starting with Earth's raw, unfiltered reality. 1,000 stories played out, each one a testament to humanity's resilience, the reconstruction of ruined cities, communities working together to rebuild what war had taken, the educational reforms, the scientists and farmers who had given everything to ensure humanity's survival. Then came the centerpiece of the broadcast, a live feed of a joint human-alien peace conference, held on Earth's soil. Leaders of the most prominent galactic races, including the Tron, a species known for their martial prowess, sat at a round table with humans, discussing mutual cooperation. It was a message loud and clear. Humanity was not just willing to work with others, they were capable of it. Ethan watched the live feed in silence, every second stretching out, every breath more labored than the last. This was it. The culmination of everything he had fought for. Hours passed in tense silence as the broadcast concluded. Then, the message came through. The Galactic Council was convening for an emergency vote. Icarus' voice echoed in Ethan's mind as he prepared for the final decision. You have made your case, Commander Hale. But the galaxy does not forget. Your people may have shown cooperation today, but the question remains, are you truly ready to join us, or will your past betray you once again? Ethan closed his eyes, the weight of those words heavy on his chest. In 72 hours he would have his answer. Would humanity be accepted, or cast aside? The final day had arrived. The countdown to the Galactic Council's decision was winding down, and Ethan Hale stood alone on the observation deck of the Perseverance. The vast expanse of space stretched before him, a silent witness to the war that had defined humanity's history. Earth's future hung in the balance, a precarious thread that could snap with the wrong decision. He had done everything he could. The broadcast had been humanity's final plea, a plea for understanding, for acceptance. It had been a powerful message, one that resonated across the galaxy, but would it be enough? The silence was broken by the low hum of the ship's comms system. Claire Dorian's voice crackled through, laced with tension. Ethan, the Council is calling for you. They've reached a decision. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. This was it. There would be no second chance. The galaxy had watched, and now the judgment would be passed. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was once again filled with representatives from countless species, each seated in their designated positions. The chamber's walls were aglow with shimmering lights, their pulses synchronized to the solemnity of the moment. Ethan stood at the center, facing the imposing figure of Supreme Judge Icar. His heart pounded, but he held his ground. Icarus' cold eyes studied him, assessing, measuring. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. Commander Hale, you and your species have presented your case. The galaxy has watched your broadcast, witnessed your efforts, and seen your people, both the best and the worst of them. We are now ready to make our decision. Ethan's pulse quickened. This was it. His entire life, his entire fight for humanity, had led to this moment. He had stood on the edge of oblivion, staring down the abyss. He had seen his people's darkest moments, but he had also seen their greatest triumphs. He believed in them. And now, the galaxy would decide if that belief had been misplaced. Icarus' voice cut through the tension like a blade. The Galactic Council has voted, and the decision is final. The Earth will not be admitted into the galactic community. A stunned silence fell over the room. Ethan felt his heart sink, but he didn't move. He couldn't. Humanity has demonstrated potential, Icar continued, his tone clinical. But your history of violence, your propensity for aggression, cannot be ignored. The Council's decision is clear. Earth will remain outside of the galaxy's peace. Ethan's fist clenched, and for a brief moment, he saw the flash of General Breck's face in his mind. The radicals who had wanted to take Earth by force. If only he could make them see this, understand that humanity's future would not be won by violence. But the Council had made its decision, and nothing he said now would change it. Claire's voice broke into his thoughts, her words sharp and urgent. Ethan, wait. There's more. Icarus' cold gaze flicked toward her, and Ethan could hear the subtle shift in the room, the change in atmosphere. The council's eyes were now focused on the two of them. Humanity, Icar continued, has not been entirely without merit. The broadcast was a demonstration of your species' capacity for change. The council, however, has voted with one voice: humanity will be given a final opportunity. A wave of disbelief swept through Ethan. Was this some kind of twisted test? We will allow Earth one last chance, Icar said, his voice steely. But this will not be a simple matter. Your planet will be placed under quarantine, cut off from all galactic affairs. In 1 year you will be assessed again. If, during that year, humanity can prove that it is capable of living by the principles of peace, cooperation, and restraint, then the Council will reconsider its decision. But make no mistake, Commander. This is your final chance. Fail, and humanity will be exiled from the galaxy forever. Ethan stood motionless, the gravity of the decision sinking in. A year. A single year to prove humanity's worth. He could see it now, the path ahead, a dangerous, fragile path. The radicals would resist. The military factions would rise. But this was humanity's last shot. There would be no turning back. He looked up, his gaze meeting Icarus. 1 year. We will prove we are ready. Icarus' expression remained unmoved. We shall see, Commander. Later, in the briefing room, the weight of the decision seemed to hang in the air like a storm cloud waiting to break. Ethan sat at the table with his most trusted officers and Earth's leaders, Claire at his side. The room was filled with the quiet murmur of voices, each person digesting the enormity of what had just transpired. So, it's official, General Kavanaugh said, breaking the silence. His voice was strained, almost incredulous. We have 1 year to prove ourselves, or be condemned. Ethan nodded, his mind already racing ahead, formulating a plan. Yes. But it's not just about what we show the galaxy. It's about what we prove to ourselves. We can't afford to let our past define us anymore. We've been given a chance to evolve, to rise above our history. This is our moment. Kavanaugh looked skeptical, but the tension in his posture had softened. You really believe this can work? Ethan met his gaze. I believe in humanity's potential. I believe in our ability to change. Claire spoke up, her voice firm. But we can't do it alone. We'll need the support of every faction, every human on this planet. If even one faction decides to rebel, we'll lose everything. It has to be a united front. Ethan nodded. We'll unite or we'll fall. There's no middle ground. As the meeting broke up, Ethan remained seated at the table, his mind whirling with plans. 1 year. He couldn't afford to waste a single moment. Humanity had been given a gift and a warning. They had one chance, one shot at proving they had learned from the mistakes of their past. Claire walked up to him, a serious look on her face. What now? Ethan looked up at her, a fire burning in his chest. Now we get to work. We show the galaxy that humanity is not defined by the scars of war, but by our will to overcome them. We fight for peace, peace built on the sweat, the tears, and the blood of those who came before us. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Ethan allowed himself a small, grim smile. This is our moment, Claire. We will prove them wrong. And with that, he stood, ready to lead humanity through its final trial. They had been forged by war, yes. But now, it was time to forge something better.